This story, the one you sent over, it really got to me.
Yeah.
It's about a father and a son, and it's attributed to Rabbi נחman of Breslov, and it touches on a lot of those things,
Yeah.
like yearning and
Right.
missed opportunities,
Absolutely.
and this whole idea of how we navigate spiritual growth.
It's interesting, because all the characters, even the ones that seem like they're really minor,
Right.
they all play this huge role in the story.
Yep.
It's like every thread is important to see the full picture.
Yeah. So let's sort of unpack this a little bit.
Okay.
So we start with this rabbi who desperately wants a son. And, finally his prayers are answered.
Mm-hmm.
But then it takes this turn that you don't really expect.
Right.
The son is devoted to his studies and his prayers.
Right.
But he still feels this, deep emptiness.
It's not just, like a lack of knowledge,
Right.
or that he's not doing his religious duties.
Yeah.
It's like this inner yearning, almost like a soul-level hunger that just traditional learning can't really fill.
And he's so young, too.
Yeah.
The story really emphasizes that, he's just starting out on this journey. He's full of potential, but he's also really vulnerable.
Absolutely.
And so he turns to his friends for guidance.
Right.
And they suggest that he seeks out a tzaddik.
The concept of a tzaddik, it's really, really central to Hasidic thought.
Yeah.
It's that righteous person that kind of acts as a spiritual
Yeah.
guide. And they're not just scholars, it's like they embody this kind of spiritual light, this connection to the divine.
Right.
That can really show others the way.
And so the son, tries to set out to find the tzaddik, but his father right away is like, no way.
Yeah.
He says that his son is already so learned.
Mm-hmm.
And it's almost like he's implying that the tzaddik is somehow beneath them.
Right.
But I feel like there's got to be something more than just pride there.
It almost feels like the father sees this tzaddik as like competition, like a threat to his influence over his own son.
Yeah.
And I think maybe there's that fear of letting go.
Right.
And, that unknown path that his
Right.
son might go down.
And then it's like this series of obstacles,
Yeah.
Every time the son tries to reach the tzaddik, there's these misfortunes.
Mm-hmm.
A horse falls, the carriage breaks down.
Yeah.
It's like the universe is against him.
And the father
Yeah.
uses these events as justification to, turn back.
Right.
It
Right.
makes you think, is he subconsciously setting these obstacles up?
Yeah.
Projecting his own anxieties onto the whole situation.
And then there's that encounter with the merchant who
Yeah.
basically dismisses the tzaddik,
Right.
says he's insignificant.
Right.
And, at the time, it seems to just, support all the father's doubts.
Totally.
But looking back, it feels so convenient, it
Yeah.
was perfectly placed, that whisper of doubt.
Yeah. It really highlights those little ways we can be misled, how easily we can rationalize those fears and cling to what we know.
Totally. And tragically, the son dies before ever even reaching the tzaddik.
Mm-hmm.
But this is where it gets really supernatural.
Right.
He appears to his father in a dream.
Yes.
And he is furious.
It's not just sadness or disappointment or,
Right.
it's anger.
Yes.
Like he feels betrayed.
Right.
The son demands an explanation.
Yeah.
And it forces the father to finally face, what happened
Yeah.
because of his actions.
You can feel the weight of everything the son never got to do, this yearning that was never fulfilled.
Absolutely.
And the dream happens over and over.
Right.
It just
Right.
emphasizes how intense his emotions are. It's like an urgent message,
Yeah.
It's like
Yeah.
he's saying you made a mistake and now you have to understand why.
And it pushes the father, even though he doesn't want to
Right.
go seek out the tzaddik.
Mm-hmm.
Not because he believes in it, but because he's afraid.
Yeah.
Because his son's words are haunting him.
Right.
And that's when he starts to understand what really happened.
And he runs into the merchant.
Yeah.
The merchant from before.
Right.
But this time the merchant shows his true self.
Right.
Like he's this demonic figure
Yes.
who was purposely messing up the son's plans to reach the tzaddiks.
It's scary because it shows you that there are these unseen forces at play.
Right.
Like a spiritual battle that's happening under the surface of everything.
So it wasn't just bad luck.
Exactly.
The horse falling, the carriage breaking.
Yeah.
That was all this demonic force.
This is all planned.
Wow. And the reason he gives is even more disturbing.
I know.
He says that the sun was like a small light.
Right.
And the tzaddik was like a great light.
Mm-hmm.
And that together they could have brought about the Messiah.
It's huge.
So this demonic being was delaying something.
Yeah.
Something huge.
Yeah.
By stopping the sun.
Right.
And it really makes you rethink the father's actions.
It goes from a personal drama
Right.
to this cosmic level struggle.
Yeah.
And, it makes you wonder about all the choices we make.
Yeah.
And the things that might be influencing us, even when we think we're doing the right thing.
Totally.
For ourselves or our loved ones,
Yeah.
And Rabbi נחman actually says this merchant is Samyalo.
Wow.
That powerful demonic figure in Jewish mysticism.
Yeah.
It adds like a whole other layer to the story.
Yeah. So we're not talking about
Right.
just some random obstacle. This is like a force that's totally against goodness and, spiritual growth.
Right.
It's kind of scary, to be honest.
It is, but it also highlights, how our choices, even the ones that seem small, can have these huge spiritual implications.
Right.
We're part of this big cosmic struggle.
Yeah, and the father is right in the middle of it.
Right.
And he realizes what he's done.
Yeah.
The story ends with him saying, "Woe to that which is lost and cannot be retrieved."
Yeah.
It's so sad.
It really speaks to that human feeling of regret.
Yeah.
That pain when you realize you've missed an opportunity.
Yeah.
Especially when it comes to someone you love.
You can feel his anguish,
Absolutely.
knowing that he contributed to his son's suffering, even if he didn't mean to.
Right.
And it makes you think about your own choices,
Yeah.
Like, have I ever resisted guidance or held someone back out of fear or because I didn't understand?
Right. It reminds us to pay attention to those voices inside us and, in others too.
Yeah.
To figure out what's real guidance and what's just doubt trying to lead us astray.
It's like we're always walking through a minefield of all these influences,
Right.
inside and outside,
Absolutely.
So how do we learn to tell the difference? How do we know which path to take?
That's the big question.
Yeah.
But this story gives us some clues.
Okay.
It shows us how important it is to look for guidance.
Okay.
Be open to seeing things from a different point of view.
Like the son asking his friends for advice because he knew his father couldn't give him what he needed.
Right.
So it's about being open to learning from different people, people who have different kinds of wisdom,
Absolutely. And we have to look at why we're resisting.
Yeah.
Is it fear?
Yeah.
Or pride?
Right.
Or are we really worried about the other person?
Yeah. Like the father. He was resisting because he loved his son.
Yeah.
But it was a possessive kind of love.
Right.
A love that was about control, not about helping his son grow.
Right.
It makes me think about how we might accidentally stop people around us from growing, even when we're trying to be good,
Right. And that brings us to the small light and the great light.
Okay.
The son with all his yearning. He was like a spark waiting to be lit.
Right.
A unique expression of the divine.
And the Tzaddik.
Yeah.
He had that connection to the divine.
Yeah.
He could have been the guide, the inspiration to help that small light become brighter.
Together, they could have changed things.
Yeah.
Not just for themselves,
Right.
but for the whole world.
It's a great metaphor,
Yeah.
about how important it is to connect with people who inspire us to grow.
Absolutely. Mentors, teachers,
Yeah.
people like that.
So it's not just the father who missed out.
Right.
It's the son, too.
Yeah.
He missed his chance to reach his potential, and the world missed out on the good that could have come from that union of light.
Exactly. It's not just a personal tragedy.
Right.
It's about how our choices affect everyone.
Right. And how history unfolds,
Yeah.
like a ripple effect.
Right.
One tiny act of resistance.
Can have huge consequences.
Wow.
You can delay or even stop positive change.
It makes you realize how much responsibility we have, even in our everyday interactions,
Absolutely.
It makes you think about all those people we meet,
Yeah.
who have that spark, that small light inside them, and they're just waiting for someone to help them,
Right.
to really shine.
Absolutely.
What if we're all playing a part in that,
Yeah.
helping those lights grow or maybe holding them back?
That's a powerful thought, isn't it?
It is.
And it goes back to what we were talking about before.
Yeah.
You know how every character matters?
Right.
The friends who gave the son advice, the merchant who messed things up,
Right.
even the little details of the trip.
Yeah.
It all played a part in how things turned out.
Yeah.
It shows us that we're all connected.
Right.
Our choices affect each other in ways we might not even see.
This whole idea of a spiritual battle going on behind the scenes, it's so fascinating.
Yeah.
But also a little creepy.
I know.
So how do we figure out how to live in that hidden world?
Right.
How do we make sure we're on the side of the light?
Well, I think the story gives us some answers.
Okay.
First, it reminds us that we have to be able to tell the difference between things.
Okay.
You know, not all advice is good advice.
Right.
We have to develop that inner voice,
Mm-hmm.
that feeling that tells us what's right for our soul.
Yeah, it's like we have to learn to trust our gut.
Exactly.
I know I've taken advice before that led me down the wrong path.
Right.
Or ignored my intuition and regretted it later.
Yeah. And that inner voice gets stronger when we take time for ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
You know, meditate, reflect, spend time in nature. It's about quieting the outside world.
Yeah.
So we can hear that wisdom inside us.
The story also shows us how dangerous pride and fear can be.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the father was resisting because he was afraid of losing control. He thought he knew what was best for his son.
Yeah. Makes you wonder how often we do that.
Right.
Project our own stuff onto other people.
Yeah.
And stop them from growing. It's hard to see sometimes, isn't it?
It is.
We think we're doing it out of love.
Yeah.
But it's really our ego calling the shots.
Yeah.
It takes humility to admit that we don't have all the answers.
Right.
To realize that other people can teach us things too.
It's about letting go of that need to control everything and trusting that everyone has their own journey to follow.
Exactly. Even if it's not the one we would choose for them.
Right.
And, you know, that brings us to the saddest part of the story.
Yeah.
The missed opportunities.
Right.
The father's words. Woe to that which is lost and cannot be retrieved.
It's powerful.
Yeah.
It reminds us that our choices have consequences.
Right.
Not just for us, but for everyone around us. It's like a wake-up call, you know?
Yeah.
To pay attention to those little lights we see and think about how we can help them grow.
To be a source of support
Yeah.
and encouragement.
Right.
And believe that even small acts of kindness can make a big difference.
This has been a really amazing conversation.
Me too.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.
It's been a pleasure.
And until next time, keep searching, keep questioning, and keep those little lights burning bright.